Hi, I'm Madame Bee Speaker, and today we're going to have a tour of the winter plants in our community garden. In this corner here, we have the winter pollinator corner, and these plants are specifically grown for blooming in late winter, early spring to provide nectar and pollen for pollinators. So as you can see, one of the big features in this is our beautiful sakura cherry tree. And in winter, a good thing to explore is to look at the bark of the trees in the garden. And this tree has a very beautiful silvery bark with these lateral lines, which are called lenticels. A fun thing to do is to take a piece of paper and a crayon and put the paper against the tree and then make a rubbing of the different patterns of bark that you can find in the garden. Some of the other plants that are grown around here include pulmonaria or lungwort, which is down here. And if you look very closely at the fuzzy leaves, you'll see they're all covered in spots. And in the early spring, late winter, there's going to be beautiful blue and pink flowers which have nectar for the queen bumblebees when they come out. On the poster here, you can also see that there's going to be some beautiful bleeding heart flowers that will bloom very early in the spring, and the bumblebees and the hummingbirds actually love those plants as well. This next part of the garden is where we have our fruit trees, and they are espaliered on these fences here, and they will bloom in early spring as well and provide beautiful nectar for our bees. And underneath here, we've also planted some heather. And heather has bell-shaped flowers that hang upside down. These ones have pink flowers and yellow flowers, and they're actually blooming right now. So on a warm day in late winter, the bumblebee queens will find this and they will sip the nectar, which gives them the energy to go looking for a nest, which is in the ground. And bumblebees like to nest in old rodent burrows. So you might see them searching the ground looking for an opening for a mouse nest or a rat nest in the ground. Over in this part of the garden, we have our herb garden, or what I like to call our scratch and sniff garden. Because what you can do is you can actually rub your fingers on the leaves of the plants and sniff them, and they have a beautiful aroma. This plant here with the silvery gray leaves is called curry plant, and it does smell like curry. A lot of the plants in this bed are actually originally from the Mediterranean, so they like dry, hot climate, but they seem to be doing really well with this really mild winter. The plant next to it, which looks very similar but has green leaves, is called rosemary. And rosemary actually does bloom in the winter, and it is one of the first plants that bumblebees will go to in the spring for that lovely fragrant nectar. And behind that, there's another plant with silvery soft leaves, which is called sage or culinary sage because we use it in cooking. So if you actually rub the leaves between your fingers, you'll see that they have a kind of a furry covering. And that also has a fantastic aroma. It might remind you of Christmas dinner. This is our winter vegetable bed. And right here we have purple sprouting broccoli, which sends out delicious shoots of these buds, these beautiful purple buds that are delicious to eat. But if you actually leave some of them to bloom, the hummingbirds, which are right in the tree next to me, and the bumblebees that come out in late winter will feast on the nectar that's in here. The same goes for these Brussels sprouts, which are also in the same family, the cabbage family, and the kale, which is right behind us. And there's different kinds of kale. There's dinosaur kale and curly kale, all delicious foods that are good for humans, but also good for pollinators. These white berries are called snowberries, and you can tell that the bees have been very busy last year pollinating, because the more bees and birds that visit these and pollinate the flowers, the bigger the berries. And these berries are nice and round. So this is not for human consumption. We don't want to eat these, but the birds will love these berries. And what's great about these is that the little pink blossoms that bloom all during summer feed the bees all summer long. So it's a very, very important pollinator plant in our garden. We also have a lot of seed heads that we've left from the flowers in our pollinator garden here. And we like to leave them in our garden and not cut them down because they will feed the birds. In this part of the garden, we have a little bit more shade. So we've grown some of our beautiful native understory plants. And a lot of these are actually, the leaves stay green all year round, which is really lovely to have them. Right in front of me, we have Oregon grape. And at this time of the year, the leaves are not only green, but they're also red and burgundy and purple. They're really lovely to look at. And in the late summer, they produce a beautiful purple berry, which you can make into kind of a beautiful juice and drink it. And it's a superfood for humans, and also for bears love them as well. And the birds love them. So it's a really good wildlife plant. And in the spring, what's fantastic is that they produce a fragrant yellow blossoms, which are really much loved by bees and hummingbirds. So they're very important pollinator plants. And beside them, we have another important plant called salal. Salal stays green all year round, and the leaves are very tough and leathery to protect themselves against the winter cold. They also produce a beautiful blue berry, which is very nutritious, another kind of superfood. And buried in the leaves, if you look very closely, you'll find a low-growing subshrub called kinnikinick or bearberry. And the little red berries are really loved by humans, but also especially by bears. These beautiful fuzzy seeds here are from a flower called goldenrod, which bloom really late in the fall. And goldenrod is one of the most important late blooming pollinator plants in our garden. It attracts bees and wasps and beetles and all kinds of insects. But now at this time of the year, we like to leave them in the garden because the birds absolutely love these seeds. So the songbirds will come and they will fill up on these wonderful seeds. This part of our garden is very dry and sunny. So we have a lot of drought tolerant plants here. And we also, in that corner of the garden over there, have a rose bush. And in winter time, you can see the little red hips, which are full of vitamin C, which are really nutritious and good for you, especially to protect you against colds and flu. This is one of my favorite places in the garden too, because it's where all the berries are grown. And right underneath here by my knee is a beautiful plant called evergreen huckleberry. And it has delicious little purple berries that are fantastic. And in the summer and early spring, the blossoms are upside down cups, which protect the nectar from getting washed out in the rain. So you can see the bumblebees actually turning upside down to sip out the nectar from their tongues, which are like straws. And on my other side over here, we have the caning berries, like the raspberries and the blackberries, and we have blueberries. And in the winter time, you can see that these have really beautiful stems, and they're already forming buds to create leaves in the spring. One of the seeds I really like to see in the winter garden are these garlic chives. It's really great to have all different kinds of chives and onions growing in the garden. And the garlic chives are the latest ones to bloom. They bloom in the late summer and into the fall. And so their seed heads are really a beautiful addition to a winter garden. And you can see the birds have already been at these, and they've eaten a lot of the seeds already. We're also growing leeks and garlic in the garden, which are another kind of other kinds of alliums. And when you let leeks and garlics bloom, these blossoms actually do support pollinators. Here's another beautiful scratch and sniff plant. I don't even have to scratch it to be able to smell that this is mint. So if you use a minty toothpaste, you're going to recognize this plant right away. It freshens your breath and it cools you down. It's a fantastic thing to add into smoothies. And this has been a really mild winter, so it's doing really well. And when it blossoms in the summer, the bees are just going to go crazy for it, and they will love it. This is another one of my favorite scratch and sniff plants. It has really, really tiny leaves, probably the tiniest leaves of all the plants that we have in the garden. And if I rub my fingers gently and smell it, it has a really strong smell, and it's called thyme. And thyme is one of those things that we love to put in our soups and stews and makes things delicious. But also in the summertime, it has pink blossoms that the bees actually really love. And so we like to plant it with other flowers that grow close to the ground, and the bees will travel from one part of the garden to the other on this carpet of blooms.